Hello, this is Graham. This session on core counselling skills includes some ground rules about the context in which we help people and some specific skills in the way we talk with them. Most people think of listening as a passive process. Psychologists, however, have demonstrated that a more active type of listening is very effective in helping people to make changes in their relationship to themselves and to those around them. The term active listening was first used in an academic paper written by Carl Rogers and Richard Farson in 1957. Rogers went on to develop the style of counselling known as person-centred, probably one of the most popular approaches to counselling and one that's evolved into education, leadership, and even group-based conflict resolution. It's been shown through experiments and data analysis that active listening has a positive impact on people's personalities. It changes their attitudes towards themselves and others, one of the fundamental purposes of psychotherapy. It also brings about changes in their basic values and personal philosophy. People who've been listened to in this way become more emotionally mature, more open to their experiences, less defensive, more democratic, and less authoritarian. Rather than telling people who've been radicalized that they are wrong and engaging in a confrontational exchange with them, active listening is used to allow them to explore the errors in their thinking. So here are 6 similar, but actually subtly different, skills used in active listening to help people open up and deepen their conversation. Let's begin with restating. It's literally what it says. The helpee says something and the helper restates it, though often with a question in their tone. Restating is when you repeat words that are being said to you in a conversation. You're demonstrating to your client that you understand and are listening to what is being said to you. It also helps the client keep on track and focused. The next skill is reflecting. Although this is very similar to restating, in reflection, the helper returns a different word for the feeling. When you do this, you're allowing the client to make sense of what they're saying. It also shows that as a listener, you're engaged with what is being said. Paraphrasing is a particular form of summing up what has been said. It's best to use the same words as the helpee. By changing the order of the words, it suggests to your client that you've not only been listening, but understanding what has been said. Sometimes people spend a long time telling us the detail of something. It helps them understand it better if we can summarize it back to them. You have to be careful not to make any assumptions in doing so, and try to capture the emotional content rather than the story itself. You might use a question instead of a statement to make it a little more tentative. Occasionally you'll get it wrong. That isn't always bad. The helpee will often summarize back to you with a correction. I guess it's fairly obvious that clarifying questions do just that. They clarify things. We don't want the conversation to be an interrogation, but in day-to-day conversation, we're usually speaking to someone of whom we know a great deal. So not knowing what they mean by something that they say can often be glossed over by filling in with information that we already have, or an educated guess. With many helping relationships, we don't have the luxury of that knowledge. So it's an important signal to the helpee when we ask them to explain something. Although this applies to anything that's unclear, it's particularly important when they're addressing feelings. Finally, one of the most significant active listening skills is the use of immediacy. This can feel quite dangerous when we first start to use it. When we're in the conversation, we can get a feeling that the helpee is being slightly remote. There seems to be something getting in between us. This may be a real problem to do with our attitude to them, but it's often a lack of trust or confidence in us because of some assumptions that the helpee is making. Immediacy involves recognizing this straight away, naming it, and inviting the helpee to engage in conversation about it. Here are a couple of simple examples of immediacy. You told me when you first arrived that you've never trusted anyone in your life, and I'm wondering if you're finding it hard to trust me too. I sense that you might not be very comfortable with me. We're obviously very different. You're black, I'm white, you're female, I'm male, I'm old, you're much younger. I'm wondering if it's anything to do with any of those. In helping relationships, as with counselling, and regardless of the number of sessions and their length, we think of our relationship beginning with a helpee who is in some form of distress. After working with us, we hope that they'll be calmer emotionally. We begin by using skills to build a relationship, a supportive bond between the two of us. We use a different set of skills to develop our understanding. And finally, we use a further combination of skills to help the client devise some action steps to take them further ahead. We'll look more closely at boundaries soon, but for the time being, here are 3 things that we need to be mindful of from the outset. As the helper, we need to provide some structure to the time, whether it's to a session, let's give ourselves 15 minutes to talk together, or to a series of them. We could say that we'll meet 3 times and then review how it's working. And within a session, being mindful of the time, making sure that you don't skirt around the issue and that you allow enough time to pull it to a close. Then there are some specific situations where you know that you probably won't be able to maintain confidentiality. This is also about boundaries. In a counselling relationship, you will have named these up front, but in a helping one, this might not have happened. If you're working through an agency, then they will usually have well-prepared processes that you should follow. In a helping conversation, if someone indicates that they are seriously considering ending their own life, we need to make sure that they're looked after. There's a lot of judgment called for here. Most people who say they might never will, and most people who are close to doing so never will if their thoughts are interrupted. However, if you have strong concerns and feel that it's an emergency, call 112 and ask for an ambulance. If you prefer, you can call the Samaritans on 116 123, and they will do so for you. If the person isn't in immediate danger, but you're worried, then encourage them to call the Samaritans or their GP to speak to someone who's actually able to help. If someone indicates that they're dealing in drugs, planning a crime, about to be violent towards another person, or engaged in terrorism, then unless you're again working for an agency, you should report them to the police on 112. Let's be clear, these kinds of situations are extremely unlikely to ever arise. One more practical tip for the start of a session. Never assume that you know what the helpee wants to discuss. Always begin sessions by asking them what they would like to talk about. And finally, a quick reminder of 2 no-nos. We generally avoid giving advice in almost any situation. Nor do we give opinions. We can share facts if we really think it'll make a difference, but we always have to remember that the client may have a different opinion to ours, and that ours may not have any evidence to support it.